So happy to be talking to you today, Nikki. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I remember one of the first times that I met you and your family, it was a while ago. Colin and Roman were in ice hockey together, but it's been a long time because Colin hasn't participated in quite a while. I definitely remember that meeting and how sweet your family was and, you know, dedicated to your son. Everybody is. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your family to get started?
So, like you said, it feels so long ago from that moment. Roman is 17 now. And I cringe every time I say that out loud. He will be 18 in December. He is the most amazing, bright-eyed, sweetest kid in the world. He was diagnosed when he was 2, almost 3 years old. He is the baby of 3. So my oldest son, Nicholas, is in college. He's 21. My stepson, Jalen, is 20. And then Roman's the baby. And so I have worked as a first responder for the last 16 years. I started with the police department and now I'm with the fire department. And so that in itself was interesting. So raising 3 boys.
What an amazing job.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what? Some days I look back and I'm like, how did you do it?
I bet, because raising this journey and raising a child with autism or any, you know, differing needs is such a significant journey within itself. And then to step inside a job, I would say, I mean, you tell me, but I'm thinking you're exhausted probably most days, but you cannot waver. You have to be on your toes constantly, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because so much is changing from my life now, looking back. And something I always say is that God is engineering. That's kind of like my mantra. Like when things are going crazy, when it's all over the place, even like when I'm in the middle of something and I don't understand the purpose, I always say to myself, God is engineering. And so even with like that job, God definitely was engineering because it gave me resources and the ability to keep my son safe. It allowed me space to help other people. But as you said, it's definitely intense because at any given moment, an emergency can happen and somebody could lose their life. So you definitely have to be on your toes. But I was blessed with a group of people that understood what my home life was like and understood how dedicated I was to taking care of Roman. So literally there would be days I would be at work on a 12-hour shift and they would like push me in a corner and say, go to sleep because we know you haven't slept. And so I will always be grateful for that because I would not have been able to provide for my family and keep sane at the same time without, you know, that level of support from people around me.
That is so wonderful. Really, truly is so exciting and enlightening for me because unfortunately in our world, I have found a lot of parents who have felt pushed out of jobs. So for you to be so embraced and cared for and have such, you know, understanding, love and kindness surrounding you, so wonderful. And I love God is engineering. That is such a beautiful phrase.
You know, because there were so many days, and I know just as a parent, you get it. Like when you're in the middle of that chaos and that storm, like nothing makes sense. You're so many days I was like, why is this happening to me? Like, what is this doing? What did I do wrong? Like, what happened? And I had to learn to like sit in it. And so my grandmother used to always tell me that the eye of the storm is the calmest place. You just have to sit in it. And so literally so many times, like whatever the storm was, when I was in it, I would just sit and I would be like, it will make sense one day. It's not going to make sense right now because you're trying to see your way out of it. And so that was kind of my coping mechanism. I was like, whatever it is, God knows. Nothing catches God by surprise. We're the ones that are completely like flabbergasted with life. So that's what I run with. I'm like, all right, God's engineering, it's going to make sense. And eventually it all did.
It did, because I know that you are in a really beautiful place right now. So why don't we shift gears? What hard thing did you want to talk about today? And then you can lead us down the path of how you ended up in the beautiful place you are now.
I think the hard thing is, as caregivers, remembering to care for ourselves. Mm-hmm. I know that the journey with autism, with being a mom, with being a wife, and even this process that I'm in right now of, I've been separated for 5 years in the process of divorce. So I'm like at a point in my life where initially I looked at it like, when I'm this age, my kids will be 21, 20, and 18, and, we'll have time for ourselves. And it was kind of like I hit 40 and it was like I'm starting over. I'm trying to figure out like how I'm going to raise this amazing kid, and what does co-parenting look like, and all of these things. And I know the only reason I was able to get through that, obviously, is God engineering, but also because I didn't forget myself. And I think that is so hard for us as nurturers, because we give to everybody else. And so that probably was the hardest thing, was realizing that self-care wasn't selfish, but it was necessary so that I could keep going. Like, there was no way I could complete this journey without stopping to care for myself. And I think that's a hard thing for us to grasp sometimes.
It certainly is. I'm curious, for you, did that come earlier, almost for survival reasons, or did it kind of take a while for you to figure it out, how to care for yourself?
I think it was definitely survival reasons initially, but I think that I've always been blessed to have friends and coworkers and people around me to pour into me when I was not able to do it for myself. And so it always reminded me and kept me in a place of, what, everybody doesn't have this, Nikki. Like, everybody doesn't have a support system. Like, every parent doesn't have the job that gets it and that understands. And so it always made me at some point want to say, hey, how can I give that to somebody else? How can I give these things that I'm blessed with who may not have it? And so even in that, it was, you have to take care of yourself first before you go out and try to save the world. And I'm still learning it now. Like, there are days now where I have to remind myself, it is okay to do nothing. Like, you're not being lazy. You're not wasting time. Rest is essential. So it's definitely a process that I'm getting better at. Right.
And so what type of things do you do to take care of yourself?
Sleep is definitely at the top of the list. Some days I sleep, because there have been so many times where I was afraid to sleep because I was afraid if Roman would get out and I wouldn't hear him, or he would be in crisis and having meltdowns and couldn't sleep. So then, of course, I was up with him. I love reading. I actually crochet and knit as a part of my business, but I've gotten to the point now where I literally just do it for fun. Mm-hmm. And so, just trying to give myself downtime, like not work, give myself peace and just rest. And rest looks different for all of us, but definitely I just think resting and pouring back into myself so I'm able to go back, fight whatever it is, and I'm fighting that week.
So I wanted to circle back around to a couple of the points that you made. When you have a child who, first of all, the child has autism, the child is a non-speaker, the child potentially will wander or dart, leave the house altogether, not even fast, just open the door and walk out, right?
Right.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is a huge concern in our community. So many of our kids do this. And I know Colin did it he was a daughter in public places for many, many years. And in my experience, no one will help you. No one wants to get involved. Even if you say the words, help me, stop my son, anything like that, they'll just look at you and not do anything. They don't want to get involved. And I will say that thank God Colin is over that phase of his life. I am so grateful for that. But there are still so many people that go through that. And like you said, you know, you have Roman in your home at night and you have to sleep like with one eye open, hoping he doesn't leave the house. I mean, so of course you're beyond sleep deprived at this point.
Yep.
I mean, was there anything that helped supported through that time? Like, I don't know, like a dog or a cat that might be a little, you know, sometimes, you know, pets are on high alert, or were your other sons around, you know, that time where you were single parenting with Roman?
So we kind of went through two stages of it. So when Roman was younger, literally we would sleep in the living room and his dad and I would take shifts. And then we got like alarms for the windows, and this little bugger was so smart. He figured out how much pressure he could put on the window before it would go off. And so he did that for about a week. And then he took the battery out of the window sensor one time. And of course, you know, I'm like, I don't hear him. And his dad was like, I was literally just downstairs. And I'm like, but I don't hear him. So we get downstairs, the window's open, the drapes are flapping, and we're freaking out.
Oh my
And so literally, thankfully, because of the job I had, I was able to call one of the dispatchers, and it was kind of known, like, if you get a kid wandering in this area, it's probably Roman. And so literally, by the time I got my shoes on, they called me, they said, hey, we got him. So, you know, thankfully, it worked that time. And so at that point, it was just, you know, we were completely on alert. We had an alarm system, you name it, but they're natural born problem solvers. So it didn't matter. And then the second time was when his dad and I had separated. Now, mind you, we live, I want to say 10 minutes driving, but it's about 3 miles between us. And Roman got out of his dad's house and walked to my house at 6 a.m. with no shoes on.
Oh my goodness.
You would not have paid me to believe that he knew how to get from his dad's house to my house, let alone while it's dark, foggy morning, like entire heart drop. And so at that point, it's 2.7 miles because I checked. When he got here, I checked. Yeah, 2.7 miles, and he walked. And so at that point, you know, it was clear, like, he wanted to stay with me full time. And I was like, well, if we don't let him, he's going to leave. So we had to then rebuild around what that looked like. So I have a dog who is fantastic. He actually is able to detect when Roman would have seizures, all types of things. So the good thing with this dog is, like, if Roman moves, he's laying on him. So, like, when Roman would sleep on the couch, Esco would come lay next to him. So if ever there was a hint or it looked like he was thinking about it, Esco would be up, Esco would start barking. So the good thing was, I was like, if he gets out of the house, Esco's going with him at that point.
That's right.
Yeah, but it's just, you know, I don't think people really consider those type things, like what that looks like, having a child that literally, the tougher you make it for them, it's like a game. They're like, okay, how can I get out of this? How can I figure it out? And they're good.
Oh, yeah. They are brilliant problem solvers for sure. I'm just curious, is your dog an actual therapy dog, or is he just intuitive and he kind of evolved into the role?
Yeah, he actually evolved into the role. Like, literally, when I moved out, you know, the boys would come stay with me on my days off. And a friend of mine got me a dog because they were like, you know, you're used to being in a house full of people, and now you're kind of by yourself sometimes. So we want you to have a dog. And I got this puppy, and I was hesitant. And one day he started barking, and I'm like, why is this dog barking? And then, long story short, 5 minutes later, Roman had a seizure. And I was like, you're in there, pal. We're keeping you forever. And so what would happen is, when Roman would, you know, he would start hitting himself when he was having meltdowns, Esco would be right there, and he would try to move his hands out of the way. And when he was on the floor crying, he would lay there and lick him until he stopped. And, you know, a couple of times he would get kicked, and he would just move, and he would go right back at it. So he fell in love with Roman, and he naturally just progressed into it. So he's wonderful. Like, if I'm sad, you know, when I was sick a few times, like, he would come lay next to me. So he just adapted and kind of took the job.
I love that so much. I mean, I'm a huge animal lover. I'm definitely partial to dogs, but they are so healing. And that story in and of itself is just absolutely amazing. Like, he's like, he knows this kid needs me. This whole family needs me. That's amazing. Yep. I love it.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Did Roman grow out of eloping? Did he kind of settle in once he was with you?
I think what happened was we kind of had an agreement, if that makes sense. Because I was just like, I always assume that he can understand me. I never assume that he doesn't get it or something is too complicated for him. And so literally, I would sit him down buddy, look, you can't leave by yourself. I would talk to him the same way I would talk to his brothers. I need you to communicate with me. If you want to go to Chick-fil-A, this is how you communicate these things to me. And so, we had a schedule. I would purposefully take him to the places where he wanted to go. And I think it got to the point where, especially during the pandemic, he just wanted to get out. He wanted to be around his friends because all of his friends were at school. Roman has always been in a specialized school, which he's always had full 12-month programs. So there's never really been an extended amount of time that he was out of school. And so the pandemic was just horrible for him, on top of he was going through puberty. So I don't think he necessarily grew out of it, because whenever he left, it was always purpose driven. He wanted to go somewhere. He wasn't just going out to go out. And so what eventually happened was we actually placed him in residential school, which was really, 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 really hard for me. But now seeing how well he's doing, I realized that is exactly what he needed. He needed around the clock schedules, socializing, all of those things. And I just did not have the ability to be all of those things for him at one time. And so as a mom who completely, when I found out my son was autistic, I had found resolve and peace with the fact that, this kid's going to be with me forever. It probably will be me and him forever. And I was good with that. And I was okay with that. And I think the toughest part of that was when it was maybe that's not what's going to be. Maybe that's not what he needs. And so I had to set aside my personal feelings about it and say, what is the best decision for him? What is going to make him the happiest? What is going to make sure that he has the best quality of life, whatever it looks like? And it wasn't being cooped up in the house with me.
Right. He needed to spread his wings more. And some kids absolutely need that.
Yep.
And it seems his cup is full at school because everything he wants and desires is there.
And it was I still cry because there are days where I miss him. But it's when we Skype and he uses his iPad and he says, I am happy, and he tells me about his day, it is the best thing. I mean, literally, it's like he's at college. He gets up, he goes, he gets ready for class. He has breakfast in the morning. He has activities during the day. He comes home at least once a month. And then, on holidays and things like that. And then when he's home for 3 days, he has his iPad and he's like, school. I'm like, you ready to go back? And he shakes his head, yeah. And I'm like, oh, so you just come home, eat my food, get new clothes, and leave. So, so he's excited. He's happy. And that's all I can ask for, and I'm so thankful for his big brother because, he said to me, I'll never forget, Nick was like, would you let me live with you forever? And I was like, absolutely not. And he said, well, Mom, why do you think Roman would want to stay with you forever? And I was like,
wow. There's so much perspective to that statement. Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. And so, when he got to school and his teachers were like, he knows how to fold his clothes and he knows how to do this, I got to see all of the things that I had taught him he was doing at school on his own. And it made me feel good because I'm like, you gave him so much. He now gets to show you all of the things that he learned and he kept with him. And so, just seeing him with his friends and trying new foods, and I'm like, wait, he ate what? And they're like, he made this and he did this and he makes his bed every morning. And I'm like, as a mom, it's like, okay, Nikki, you made the right decision. That's what he needed. And so, I feel better about it.
You truly gave him the greatest gift in the world, and that was choice and independence. I mean, that's amazing. I think as moms, we kind of fall into that it's okay, I'll do whatever it takes. It'll be him and I forever or her and I forever if it work, and I'll do whatever it takes because I'm his mom until my dying breath. That's just what I'll do. But what if the kid's like, but that's not what I want? And clearly Roman was one of those kids, and just such an amazing story to see how it unfolded, and that he's in such a happy place, and that he continues to, evolve and grow and develop and learn new skills, and just, he's got his buddies there. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful story.
I'll never.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to, if anything, the only problem that we have here in Maryland is that we don't have enough of those opportunities for our kids.
Right.
So, in terms of residential. So I was just curious, did you have was there a waiting list, or were you just kind of accepted? Were they in a place where they were accepting clients, or how did that work?
So I definitely, I'm going to say this again, a lot of this was God engineering, because the process, I actually was able to talk with another parent who did it, and she kind of walked me through the steps. And, when we talked, the one thing she said, I know that you're ready because every parent's not ready. And so, she told me, she was like, this is an 18-month process. We started in December. We had his acceptance in April, but we still couldn't get him to school until July. So it was a wait. I think what helped us was the fact that I started digging for resources early. So when Roman was first diagnosed, the speech pathologist who did his evaluation, the first thing she told me, she was just like, you want to get on the autism waiver. She says, you're not going to hear from them for years, but you need to do it now. And so literally we were on the waiver for, I think, 7 years before we got a phone call. But because I had started so early, Roman was 11. So him being on the autism waiver absolutely positively made it possible. Had he not been on the waiver, I don't think this would have happened. So the process in itself, because I had another parent that kind of walked me through it, it was a bit easier for me, because if you don't know the ins and outs, if you don't know the right wording, if you don't know the verbiage to use, if you don't know who to call, you will get so frustrated with the process that most parents will give up, because the process itself is not simple. Again, we have an amazing autism waiver coordinator who's been with us for years. All of Roman's teachers, doctors, again, I guess it's the relationship that we've built with them over the years. We're very supportive because they saw everything that we were going through. And everyone was saying, you might want to think about this. You might want to think about this. And like you said, the mom in me was like, nope, I got it. I'll work it out. I'll struggle through it. I don't care. But then when it got to the point where I'm like, he's not happy, then it was like, how do I do this process? So, that's always my goal, is once I get through it, you know what, if I can help somebody else get through it quicker and easier than I did, then that's my goal. Because I know for me, it was tough. And it wasn't as tough as it could have been because, again, like I said, I had another parent walk me through it. So pretty much anything that I go through, I'm constantly taking notes, so that when another parent's like, hey, I'm struggling with this, I can say, you know what, this is what I did, try this. But you're right, there aren't enough resources, because even with his school, we had to wait until they hired staff before they could take him. And so, another family that I was helping, they just have a wait list right now. And so they're on the wait list. So there are so many resources that our kids need, but there just aren't enough providers to provide the resources.
So in Roman's case, they had the actual space, but they did not have the staffing for him.
Correct.
And in typical situations, would you say that you kind of have to wait until somebody graduates out of the program at 21 for space to open? Is that kind of how it works?
I think a lot of times that is the case. But of course, with the time that we were trying to get him admitted to school, we were also smack dead in the middle of the pandemic. So we were dealing with all of those things, whether, you know, they were even accepting new students. So just the world kind of being completely crazy on its own without the added confusion. Because, you know, like the life of our kids is just, it's never simple. It's always something complicated, whether it's finding the resource and then you find the resource, but then they don't have staffing. You know, with the waiver and like respite, we would have hours upon hours, but a lot of times we didn't get to use them because we couldn't find agencies that had staffing that we were good with. You know, a lot of times we had community care hours that we could use, but explaining to agencies, well, we need the same person. It can't be a new person every single day. You know what I mean? So even that, like having a certain standard and wanting to interview the people that work with your kids, you know, that decreased the availability because there are some parents that just need a break. And if it means I have to have a different person doing this every day, you know, some parents need it that bad, and I get it. And I don't, you know, I'm never judgmental about how people pick out services or whatever for their kids. But I was the parent. I'm interviewing. I want references. My kid has to like you. You know what I mean? Like, because I want him to be safe. If I'm trusting you with this extension of my heart, like, I'm going to be like the Secret Service. I'm all over it. Like, I need to know everything there is to know, which, you know, in some cases, that's going to cut the list in half or maybe down to 2, depending on what, you know, what you're dealing with. So it's a lot.
Absolutely. And then on top of it, you have the complication of the pandemic and people getting sick and such a high turnover in this field, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you was just for the parents out there who have not yet reached the autism waiver, because as you mentioned, it is such a long wait, typically anywhere from 7 to 10 years, I think is average. For Colin, it was 9. But in your experience, I know you're not speaking for all of residential because you only know your experience. Because he was on the waiver, had a little bit maybe of priority, or what is it that they're funded by the waiver?
And I hope I'm being accurate, but I can explain it as far as Roman's situation. So I believe, because residential school is actual school, he's school age, and there are certain services that are funded through Baltimore City as far as the school part of it. And then the waiver takes care of other resources such as respite, therapeutic integration, which can double as like an after school program, things like that. Because he was on the waiver, they were able to basically fund and pay for the residential school portion of it. So whereas Roman had private placement for schools, residential counts as private placement as well. And so because, you know, he has an IEP and he has private placement for school, he is eligible for school services up until the age of 21. So he is able to stay in that residential school setting until he's 21, and that's when we would look at the next transition or change. Because those services are provided by the waiver, the cost that we would incur is different than it would if it were completely separate. This is just a placement you decide that you want for your child, if that makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense.
So there's still a family contribution monthly as far as tuition and what that looks like, but I guarantee it is nothing compared to what it would be if those services were not funded by the waiver, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
if you have a child that's not on the waiver, I believe, like, if they have private placement, there is an option, but I'm not sure and I'm not familiar with what it exactly is. But with the waiver, there are specific schools that are earmarked that they will fund or pay for. So it's not just kind of like a free-for-all. If your child's on the waiver and the waiver is going to cover it, there are specific schools that you have to choose from in order for them to cover whatever the cost is.
Okay. Gotcha. The waivers are very complex. So
right. I learned something new every day.
Yeah. I really appreciate you giving us a little bit of insight of your experience, because again, we know that there's so many families who are just waiting and just desperately need some support, but it is quite a learning curve even when you get there. So those waiver coordinators play such an important role. Dear Lord.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been blessed because Roman's IEP coordinator, he had, from the time he started school until he made the transition to residential school. And then when he made the transition to residential school, his IEP coordinator took a job at the waiver department. So he still has the same group of people.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I say, like, I have been blessed with an amazing team when it comes to that kid, because he has the same people, and I can call and be like, hey, I need some help. Can you help me with this? And they're like, what does Roman need? Okay, we'll get on it. You know what I mean? And so that's the other thing. I would just encourage parents, like, build those relationships. There, a lot of these people that are in these positions, they want to do a good job. They take their job seriously and they love our kids. And it makes them so happy to be able to be helpful. Like, reach out, build those relationships. Like, I'm one of those people. I send Christmas cards, I send gifts, because I know that I could not do this solo. I could not do this by myself at all.
Yeah, you have an entire army behind you. We have to build an army, because it is so complicated on so many levels, and there's so many avenues. It's
right.
That's just so wonderful. And I do want to circle back around to the actual hard thing that we were talking about. Not that all of it is not hard. I don't want to take away from any of it, because it's also hard. But the thing that you wanted to focus on primarily was how taking care of yourself. And sleep was one of the things that you brought up that's so important. And I've always thought, my God, if only we could sleep, I don't know, 10 or 12 hours. And then if the next 2 or 3 weeks we're only sleeping 3 or 4 hour chunks, we could apply that 12-hour night and bar an hour or two from that, kind of store up sleep. But obviously that doesn't work. And we just become exhausted walking zombies. So I love that you embrace sleep, because it is recovery, right?
Yeah.
So just talk to us a little bit about how that looks for you. I mean, I'm sure over the years, sometimes sleep was only, like you said, going at the corner at work and dozing off for 15 minutes. But is it napping? Is it sleeping all day? How has it sort of evolved for you so it has helped you to take care of yourself?
So at one point, it was more like napping. I probably definitely got more sleep at work than I did at home. And even then, I was completely on alert. And to be honest, in all of these years, the first time that I slept sound was when Roman had his stay at Shepherd Pratt. So it was December of 2020. 2020, yeah, 2020. It was just, we were having meltdowns, and we had built a whole sensory room, and he had a place where he could kind of let it out, and he ran through the wall, came out on the other side of the wall. And so finally, I called 911. We took him to the hospital, and we got the GBMC. I told them, look, I know the spiel. We got to stay here till a bed's ready. Miraculously, a bed was ready the next day. And so
that's amazing.
I had to and look, mind you, this was Christmas Eve on his birthday. His dad and his brother had just been diagnosed with COVID. So I was at the hospital with him by myself. And so I took him and I had him admitted and checked in. And I'll never forget, I looked him in his face and I said, do you trust me? And he shook his head, yes. And I said, Mommy's got to leave you here, but I'll be back. And so I left him and I went home. And it still brings me to tears today. I turned my phone on silent, and that was the first night in 16 years that I slept soundly, because I knew that he was safe. I knew that no matter what was happening, they were not going to call me to come get him. And I think that was the first night in years that I had slept without jumping up, without looking at my phone to make sure I didn't miss a message or I didn't miss a call from his dad. And it was that literally was the first night in over a decade that I slept completely sound. And so what I've done up until this point is I meditate a lot. And I actually became a Reiki practitioner to help balance my energy and his energy. And so that actually helps me sleep a lot as well, because
wonderful.
It's self-healing, and I can kind of help him from a distance if I need to. And then I also it makes me mindful of my energy, because what I learned over time is Roman and I are really in tune. I could always tell when something was off with him, even when we weren't together. And so, it keeps me mindful to rest, because I'm like, I think your son knows when you're off. When you're having a bad day, he's having a bad day. For us, I know that connection is there. And so I also know that taking care of me means I'm taking care of him as well.
Oh, I love that. Energy is such a powerful force. And I don't know if everyone is completely in tune with it. And, not saying that it's a bad thing, but maybe they're unaware, or maybe they're just so busy that it's not something they ever thought of. But it really is, when you kind of let go and you practice meditation. Well, it is a practice. It doesn't come easy for everyone. Once you let go and really learn and just be, and then you just start recognizing that energy source for you. And then like you said, the connection you have with your children, and it is powerful. So I think that's so amazing that you went and became a practitioner too. Awesome.
Yeah, it literally, when I say nothing was off limits, I was like, if there is a possibility that it will help him, I will learn it. And it ended up being beneficial for both of us. Because I'll never forget, we had a psychiatrist that actually explained it to us that Roman spends so much energy trying to self-regulate that sometimes he has to let it out. And so, even on social media, I follow a lot of autistic adults. And so there was a one lady that I followed that said to me, sometimes a meltdown prevents a shutdown for her. So sometimes she has to melt down and let it all out so that her body doesn't completely shut down. And that's what I would see with Roman. He would do really well in school, or he would do it was almost a clock. He would do good for 3 days, but on that fourth day, it would be chaos, and it would come out of nowhere. And I said, that makes sense. Because he's excellent in school. He's focused. He learns. And I'm like, he's self-regulating. He's keeping himself calm, and he's exerting so much energy keeping himself calm that by that fourth day, he has to let it out. And so it was so funny, when he was at school, his teacher said that they were working on feelings. And Roman, using his iPad, said that when he feels anxious or angry, he sees red and he feels it in his hands. And so, this is coming from him. No one is making him say that. And instantly I'm like, okay, so, all right. So we got to the point where, we would sit and meditate. I could get him, when you start feeling this way, let's go in your room. And I would say, do you need time to go to your room? And he would go in his room and he would calm down. There would be moments where, he would hit the walls. He would run into the walls. And I would look at him and I'd be like, are you good? And there were days where he put me out of his room. No, you get out. And so for him to go from that to be able to go to school, and they're like, yeah, he had a moment. He asked to go to his room and he was fine. And, for them to say, well, these are the colors I see and this is how I feel and this is where I feel it. It makes me realize, you're not crazy. He feels certain things and that energy is real. And teaching him how to breathe and meditate and control it, it helps him.
Absolutely. That is amazing that he is able to convey that description to you. I have taught Colin breathing techniques because COVID was the year from hell for everybody.
Right.
And, it's just really simple. Breathe in for 5, hold for 5, breathe out for 5, and do it like 10 times. But it's a tool that he now has, and we always do it together when he is struggling. And I do meditation music, so sort of like that ambient music when Colin is like winding down and falling asleep. But we haven't quite gotten to the point where we're meditating together. But, meditation really can be anything. We can create that space however we want. There's no rules, really. So
right.
Whatever helps them. I love that Roman was able to describe what he sees and what he feels. I mean, that's a huge breakthrough for our non-speakers, right? That must have been pretty amazing for you.
I am floored whenever I get these updates and emails from school, I'm like, wow. And it makes me feel good because I was never dismissive of what he could comprehend or what he could do. And I know there were probably days where some of his teachers were just like, you're bugging. And I'm like, no, assume he can learn it. Even if we have to teach him a different way, that's what we'll do. And so, just to see, like you said, to see him thriving and be able to express himself and explain those things, it just makes me so happy for him, because I can't imagine what it feels like to have people speaking for you or saying what they think you mean, or, you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine what it's like to be in life like that, where people are like, oh, he doesn't get this, or he doesn't understand this, or, talking about them like they're not there. And that was something I always stressed is, assume he understands everything that you were saying about him. Like, do not take for granted that he doesn't get it. And don't talk about him as if he's not there. And so it's made a difference. It really has.
It's such important advice. It's like Autism 101. It's like always presume competence, always.
Right.
And maybe there's a reason he's not doing what they want him to do at school. Maybe he is not interested. I remember how hard it was hard as hell for me to learn things in high school I wasn't interested in. In fact, it was downright torture. So, they are amazing. They're intuitive. They're highly sensitive beings, I believe, and wise and beyond their years. And they like you said, they just learn differently. Teach them a different way, but never just be disrespectful and talk in front of them as if they're not there. I mean, people are doing that. They need to be called out immediately. That's just awful.
I'm grateful the fact that Roman had older brothers. And so it was like, they really treated him like the little brother. Like, he didn't get any breaks from him at all. It was just like, okay, you're one of the gang. This is what you're going to do. Yeah. You're going to hang with us. And so I'm so grateful, that he had them to protect him and, just treat him like whatever. And I would explain, your brother hears everything you're saying. Just remember that. And he would remind them, like, yeah, you said this about me. Like, there would be times where, like, he would take his brother's stuff. But, it's just, as I said, they're real people. They are living, breathing things. They're not inanimate objects. You know what I mean? Like, they have feelings, and they're sensitive, and they're probably more sensitive than we are, and they're more in tune with the world around them than we are. So, give them credit and honor that.
That's right. But also embrace them. I love that Roman's brothers did that. They're brother, and they're not going to treat him any different. The other thing you mentioned was crocheting and knitting, which I think is so cool because I don't know how to do either. I so admire that you do it. And so I'm curious, did it start as sort of like a therapeutic process, like just like a hobby to kind of help you through or calm your anxiety, or like?
Yep, that's exactly how it started. My nerves were fried, and I've always been a creative person. I love art. I love making things with my hands. And so I was like, all right, let me do something, because I was just a wreck. And so I started crocheting, and people would be like, oh, it's a great hat. Where'd you get it? And I'm like, oh, I made it. And one day, my dad's like, people will pay you for this stuff. And I was like, whatever. And so Roman needed an iPad, and I literally was making stuff, and I started selling stuff to pay for like therapy and swim classes, all the extra stuff that insurance wouldn't cover. And so literally HGE Designs was born like by accident. And so then when he needed an iPad for school, we did a fashion show and we bought iPads for his class. And then it just kind of took off from there. And so the crazy thing was eventually I realized the stuff that I was making doubled as like sensory products for him. So, when he needed to get fidgety or, like when he needed something to fidget with or something to hold, like he had a blanket, and whenever, he was anxious or was having a meltdown, he would get this blanket. This blanket would go to doctor's appointments with him. And then it was like, maybe you have something here. And then fast forward, the pandemic happened, and I realized like the stitches and the scarves and things that I were making, it mimicked the stuff that are in sensory rooms at school. And so I literally, when we did his room, I just started crocheting panels and putting them in his room so he could feel it, so he could lay on it, rub it. And it was like, other parents probably need this too. And so I actually wrote a grant, and right now I'm part of the Johns Hopkins Social Innovation Lab cohort to kind of figure out how to prototype and build these things out so that I can actually make affordable products for parents. And then, in spaces like stadiums, the mall, just so we'll have these sensory inclusive spaces for our kids.
Gosh, you're such a talented individual. You really are.
Oh.
And I love your thought process. You have an idea and then you always want to make it bigger so it helps others. And that's just such a precious gift about you.
Thank you. Yeah, because I know what this journey looks like, because I'm still in it. Like the trajectory of it has changed, but like I'm less than a year removed from my son running through a wall. Like I know what that looks like. And I know there are parents that are going through it now because, they'll call and they'll be like, I remember your Facebook post, or, somebody will be like, hey, somebody called me and you were the person who popped in my head. And so the fact that I survived those things with Roman, but then I'm able to turn around and help somebody else survive the same moment, like really gives me meaning and it gives my life purpose. And I'm like, you know what, God, I get it now. Those days weren't in vain, and I wasn't struggling for nothing. Like the point was to get Roman through it and then help somebody else through it. And so I think like there's no way I could hold on to that information knowing like what my life would have looked like had someone given it to me. I can't not share it and not be there to help other parents, because it is isolating. Like, some days you feel like you're on an island, and I just don't want people to feel that way. And I want to be able to help other people live good lives and be all right.
Yeah. And I think that is a perfect segue into the next part of the podcast about finding light in the journey. But I want to pause, because what you just said, I'm just so hopeful that this podcast platform helps to give that to the parents out there in Maryland and all over the United States. And, if it reaches other countries, that's even more amazing. But, your experience and all the moms and dads that we're talking to, it's so real. And no one should be sitting in their car crying by themselves or crying themselves to sleep or being terrified, just unable to navigate any of this because they feel so alone and isolated. So I really do hope that collaboratively our conversations that we're having really do help others. The stories that you have about Roman they're not exactly like the ones about Colin, but they're really similar.
Yeah, they all, just even sitting on some of the round tables I've been a part of, the look on some of these parents' faces when they hear each other's stories, like, oh my God, I thought it was just me. And it's like you said, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, But just for people to say, you know what, it's not just me. It's not just us. We're not the only ones navigating. Somebody else is going through this too. It's so helpful.
Yeah. Yes. When people feel supported, I feel like options are limitless. I feel like anything is possible. When someone feels alone and isolated and or just sitting in depression and anxiety, that is like the scariest place to be. But when you know you're surrounded by people, you can still be depressed and anxious. But when you have your tribe holding you up, even if they're not someone that you see every day and they might be sitting, in Washington State holding you up, but boy, does that help, right?
It does. It really does. Okay, I can't count how many people I know just, like, I have a friend in California that I met at a crochet class, and every so often she pops in like, you good? You need anything? And, she's across the country, and it's just, just like you said, just to know, like, there's some level of support, even if it's just a vent, because some days people need that just to get it out.
Absolutely. And I think in our community, we are more than happy to extend that to one another. If I put something out there because we're having a bad day, you're always like one of the dozen that reaches back like almost immediately. What I'm trying to say is we all know what it's like, so no matter what, we're always there for one another, you know? And I love that about our community because it's just a really difficult journey to navigate. But there is light in the journey, and sometimes it takes longer to find than others, even if it's just a flicker, a light bulb flickering, right?
Right.
The light does happen, and healing does happen, and life does move forward. So let's lighten this up just a little bit. So what is your favorite book?
So my favorite book is All About Love by Bell Hooks. I read that during the separation process, learning about the different types of love, how we view love, not just romantic love, but like love in itself and what it represents and what it means for you.
Okay. So if someone was like, okay, Nikki, I'm gifting you your dream vacation, where would that be?
Ooh, dream vacation. I'm going to say to the Maldives. I think that would be my dream vacation. Bungalow on the water, clear water.
Sounds amazing.
I'm a water person. I love being near water. It's kind of how I reset. And so, that's definitely bucket list vacation.
And we've talked a lot about self-love. I mean, that's really what you wanted to talk about because it's hard to prioritize that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that you maybe do to treat yourself or, I don't know, honor that healing space? Because that's my next question. What do you do for self-love and respite?
So I think I told you I have an obsession with tacos and tequila.
You did say that. I forgot about that. I love
it. Which is wild. And I think because one of the first vacations that I ever took myself on was to Mexico. And so tacos, like I always loved tacos as a kid because it just, it was like, I have 5 brothers. So, my brothers and I would just like be a big taco fest and we would all have fun. And so for me, it was like, go to Mexico, I went and I made it a point to like stay with the locals and eat like where the local people eat and drink. And they had like this tequila truck. And so like I got the whole tequila experience. And then when I came home, I was hooked. So when I really want to treat myself, I will go find a great taco spot and drink tequila. When I'm celebrating, I have tequila at home. So that's kind of like my obsession, my guilty pleasure thing for myself.
So I think they need to replace all the snowball trucks with tequila trucks.
Right? They do. It's the greatest thing in the world.
Hearing the bells coming down your street.
Right.
Tequila.
Right. I literally was like, wait, there is a tequila truck? Are you kidding me? I thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
All right. Well, Nikki, if anyone can make that happen, you can. So maybe you should add that to your next venture business idea.
Like a rested tequila truck for families.
And then finally, the last question is, what is your best advice for parents?
Take one day at a time, literally.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get yesterday back, and tomorrow's not here yet. So take one day at a time and literally just live in the moment, because you're trying to get through whatever moment is present. This is a lifelong journey, and it's going to come. So you have to find the beauty in the moment, just getting from one moment to the next.
Yeah, such good advice. And psychologists and psychiatrists always say, when you're living in the future, your anxiety skyrockets. So that's another benefit of taking one day at a time.
Yeah. So literally, it's like the problems are going to come. Like, you don't have to rush them.
That's right. They're coming.
Yeah, it'll be here. They're coming no matter what. So just deal with what you got today.
Well, I just wanted to say that Nikki has some really beautiful pieces that she's created on HGE Designs. You're on Facebook and Instagram, right?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. And she's constantly creating. I'm sure the audience has gotten that sense from you just through our discussion. She really does create some really beautiful pieces. So please take some time to look at her website. And I can't thank you enough for talking with me tonight. You're just such a beautiful person inside and out. And I just loved our chat.
Thank you.